Your morning coffee costs about 18% more than it did 3 years ago. Not just because of inflation, not just supply chains. A big chunk comes from something most people never think about: tariffs. These import taxes sit invisible in your shopping cart, but they're very real in your bank account. A tariff is a tax on imported goods. When a company brings products into the country, they pay a percentage of that product's value to the government. Here's the thing: companies don't just absorb that cost, they pass it along. If a tariff adds $3 to a container of olive oil, that $3 shows up in the retail price. Sometimes more, because everyone in the supply chain adds their markup on top. The importer pays the tariff. You pay the importer. That's how it flows. The United States imports about 15% of its food supply. That might sound small, but it's the stuff you use constantly. 60% of fresh fruit, 38% of vegetables, nearly all coffee, cocoa, and bananas. When tariffs hit these categories, there's often no domestic alternative to switch to. You either pay more or go without. In 2018, the US put tariffs on steel and aluminum. Seems unrelated to food, right? Except food companies use those materials for cans, processing equipment, and refrigerated trucks. A study from the Federal Reserve found that tariff costs got passed to consumers within months. Canned goods went up. Frozen foods went up. The average household spent an extra $500 that year on tariffed products, much of it at the grocery store. Most people never connected their higher grocery bill to trade policy. Food is price-sensitive, but also non-negotiable. You have to eat. Companies know this. When their costs go up from tariffs, they can raise prices without losing many customers. Economists call this inelastic demand. You might buy less steak and more chicken, but you're still buying something. This gives retailers room to pass along the full tariff cost, sometimes even a bit more, and shoppers keep paying because the alternative is not eating. 90% of avocados sold in the US come from Mexico. When tariff threats happened in 2019, prices spiked immediately. One analysis showed a proposed 25% tariff would have added roughly 50 cents per avocado at the store. Doesn't sound like much until you realize Americans buy nearly 3 billion avocados per year. That's $1.5 billion transferred from shoppers to cover the tax. Even the threat of tariffs moves prices. Tariffs don't just hit the imported item, they ripple. When imported tomatoes get more expensive, domestic tomato growers can raise their prices too because the competition just got pricier. When steel tariffs increase the cost of farm equipment, those costs flow into everything that equipment produces. One tariff on one product can nudge prices up across an entire category. This multiplier effect is why a 10% tariff doesn't mean 10% higher prices. It often means less, but it spreads wider than the tariffed item alone. Here's a weird one: 2018 washing machine tariffs. Prices for washers jumped about 12%, which makes sense. But dryer prices also went up 11%, even though dryers had no tariff. Why? Because manufacturers could. Retailers bundle them. Shoppers expect to buy both. The tariff gave cover to raise prices across the board. Economists at the University of Chicago calculated consumers paid about $1,700 per job saved in that industry. The money came straight from household budgets. Lower-income households spend a bigger share of their income on groceries, about 13% compared to 8% for higher earners. When tariffs raise food prices, that hits harder on tighter budgets. A study from the Peterson Institute found tariff costs are regressive, meaning they take a larger percentage from people who can least afford it. It's a flat tax that doesn't care about your income. Everyone pays the same dollar increase, which hurts more when you have fewer dollars to start. Some products have domestic alternatives you can switch to when imports get expensive. Tariffs on European cheese? Buy American cheddar, but many grocery staples have no real substitute. Can't grow bananas in Wisconsin. can't make domestic cinnamon or black pepper at scale. For these items, the tariff is just a price increase you absorb. Some people adjust by buying less, switching brands, or changing recipes. But the bottom line is this: when tariffs target food you can't replace, your choices are pay more or do without. Historical data shows prices don't drop back down when tariffs end. A National Bureau of Economic Research study found that even after tariffs were removed, prices stayed elevated. Companies don't volunteer to cut prices once consumers have adjusted to paying more. Over a decade following major tariff changes, researchers found prices remained 7 to 9% higher than they would have been. The tariff might be temporary. The price increase usually isn't. Tariffs are a policy tool with real household consequences. When you see news about trade disputes or import taxes, that's not abstract economics. It's a heads up that prices might move. Some people track which products might be affected and stock up before increases hit. Others adjust their shopping lists toward less affected items. Many economists suggest building a buffer in your grocery budget during tariff periods because those costs show up fast. The grocery bill becomes a direct link between trade policy and your monthly expenses. Tariffs function as a tax on imports that companies pass to consumers. About 15% of U.S. food is imported, including most coffee and produce. Historical examples show these costs appear in grocery prices within months. Lower-income households feel the impact more because food takes a bigger share of their budget. Prices often stay elevated even after tariffs end. Trade policy isn't separate from your wallet. It shows up every time you check out at the store. Everything covered here is for educational purposes only. This is not financial advice. Every situation is different. Consider speaking with a licensed financial advisor before making any major money decisions.